Redefine the enemy. The myth of the toxic person. What if I told you that the concept of a toxic person is a modern invention that is making you weak, reactive, and miserable? What if the very label you use to find relief is actually a chain, binding you to a cycle of anger and frustration? We live in a culture that encourages us to diagnose, label, and excommunicate anyone who causes us discomfort. We call them narcissists, energy vampires, toxic personalities. It feels empowering, like we've identified the source of our problem. But this is a strategic error of the highest magnitude. The moment you label someone as toxic, you have surrendered your power. You have defined them as a malevolent force with the inherent ability to harm your inner state. You have cast yourself as the victim, and in doing so you have made your peace of mind entirely dependent on their absence or their change, two things over which you have absolutely no control. The Stoics offered a more radical and ultimately more powerful diagnosis. They taught that no person can harm your inner self, your character, your reason, your soul, unless you allow them to. Any harm you feel comes not from their actions, but from your judgment about their actions. Seneca put it plainly: we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. The problem is not the person, the problem is the story you tell yourself about the person. I saw this play out countless times in the hyper-competitive world of technology. I had a business rival, a man named Julian. He was aggressive, underhanded, and seemed to take a personal delight in poaching my clients and spreading rumors. In my mind, he was the definition of a toxic person. I spent years consumed by my hatred for him. My mood would sour at the mere mention of his name. I wasted countless hours of mental energy replaying his offenses and plotting my revenge. He lived rent-free in my head, a tyrant in my own mind. I had given him complete power over my emotional state. It was only after my burnout, when I began studying the Stoics, that I understood the depth of my mistake. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who dealt with betrayal, incompetence, and endless political scheming, wrote to himself, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil." He wasn't making an excuse for them. He was diagnosing their condition: ignorance. He saw their malice not as a personal attack, but as a symptom of their own inner poverty. They didn't know any better. This reframed everything for me. Julian wasn't a monster sent to destroy me. He was a man enslaved by his own ambition and insecurity, acting from a place of profound ignorance about what constitutes a good life. He wasn't toxic, he was misguided. This shift didn't excuse his behavior, but it did liberate me from my hatred. It took the personal sting out of it and turned it into an objective problem to be managed, not a personal war to be won. The first step in dealing with a difficult person, then, is not to remove them, but to remove the label. You must stop seeing them as a villain in your story and start seeing them as a flawed human being acting from their own set of principles. This is the foundation upon which all other Stoic strategies are built. So I ask you, who is that toxic person in your life? And what would happen if, just for a moment, you stripped them of that label and saw their actions not as malice, but as a misguided attempt to find their own happiness or security? The inner citadel: fortifying your mind before building fences. Before you can even think about managing the difficult people in your life, you must first ask yourself a hard question: is my own house in order? We are often so focused on the external annoyance, the critical boss, the manipulative family member, the unreliable friend, that we fail to see the chaos within our own minds. We want to build fences to keep them out, but we don't realize our own gates have been left wide open. A boundary set by a person who is internally fragile is nothing more than a line drawn in the sand, easily washed away by the first wave of provocation. If your mind is a battlefield of reactive emotions, hair-trigger anger, and fragile self-worth, then any difficult person will seem like an invading army. The true Stoic path is to first build an inner citadel, a fortress of reason, resilience, and self-command so strong that no external force can breach its walls. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I had a board member who was relentlessly critical of my every move. Every meeting was an interrogation. He questioned my strategy, my team, my vision. I took it all personally. After each encounter, I would be consumed with rage and self-doubt. I'd complain to my wife, vent to my partners, and lose sleep rehearsing arguments in my head. I tried to set boundaries. I'd tell him, "Your criticism is demoralizing," or I'd try to avoid him. But it was useless. Because I was so desperate for his approval, my internal state was completely at his mercy. My boundary was just a desperate plea for him to be nicer to me. It had no force because there was no fortress behind it. My peace was a hostage he controlled. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most revered Stoic teachers, understood that true freedom is an internal state. He taught, "It is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." The board member wasn't the source of my suffering, my insatiable need for validation was. My opinion that his criticism diminished my worth was the true enemy. I had not built my inner citadel. My sense of self was built on a foundation of external praise, and he was simply kicking at the rotten beams. The work wasn't to change him, or to build a wall against him. The work was to rebuild myself on a foundation that was immune to his opinions. Here is the practical application. For the next week, before you address a single issue with a difficult person in your life, put all your focus on your own mind. Practice the morning routine we've discussed previously. Rise without snoozing, embrace silence over technology, visualize the day's challenges. When you feel a flash of anger or frustration from an interaction, don't focus on the other person. Stop, take a breath, and turn your attention inward. Ask, what is the underlying belief in me that is being triggered right now? Is it the belief that you need to be liked? The belief that you must be seen as competent? The belief that things should be easy? A mentee of mine, a young manager dealing with a perpetually negative employee, did this for 1 month. She stopped trying to fix the employee's attitude and instead used every negative comment as a trigger to examine her own need for a harmonious team. She realized her stress wasn't about the employee's negativity, but about her own flawed belief that a good leader must make everyone happy. By fortifying her own mind with a more resilient definition of leadership, the employee's comments lost their power. She was no longer fighting him, she was leading him from a place of unshakable calm. Your first line of defense is never a boundary you set with others. It is the wall of your own reasoned mind. Ask yourself, is your peace of mind a fortress that you command, or is it a fragile shack that can be blown over by the words and moods of anyone you meet? The discipline of assent. Judging the action, not the soul. Once your inner citadel is under construction, you are ready to engage with the world from a position of strength. The next tool is one of the most precise and powerful in the Stoic arsenal, the discipline of assent. This is the practice of seeing the world as it is, stripped of the emotional, often theatrical, stories we layer on top of it. The Stoics understood that an event itself is objective and neutral. It is just data. What causes our suffering is the impression we form about that data and our choice to assent or agree to that impression. A difficult person says something critical. That is the data. The impression might be, they are trying to humiliate me. They think I'm an idiot. They are a malicious person. When you agree with this story, you have given your assent to a narrative that guarantees you will suffer. The discipline of assent is about pausing in that crucial moment between the event and your response, and choosing to agree only with what is objectively true. Think of it like a security guard at the gate of your mind. Not every thought that shows up gets to enter. The emotional, exaggerated, and catastrophic thoughts are held at the gate for inspection. In my days running my company, I was terrible at this. If an employee missed a deadline, the objective data was, the report was not delivered at the agreed-upon time. But the story I would assent to was, this employee is lazy and disrespectful. They don't care about the company. This is a disaster that reflects poorly on my leadership. I would then act based on this dramatic story, often with anger and frustration, which only made the situation worse. I was reacting to a fiction my own mind had created. Epictetus gave his students a simple but profound exercise. Practice then from the start to say to every harsh impression, you are an impression, and not at all the thing you appear to be. This is the core of the practice. It's about creating a space to challenge your initial interpretation. Let's take a practical example. A family member constantly gives you unsolicited advice. The objective event is, this person is speaking words related to my life choices. Your automatic, unexamined impression is, they think I'm incapable of running my own life. They are controlling and have no respect for me. Assenting to this leads to resentment and conflict. The Stoic practitioner pauses. They hold the impression at the gate. They ask, what is actually happening here? The objective fact is merely that words are being spoken. What is the most likely truth behind them? Perhaps it is a clumsy, misguided attempt to express love and concern. Perhaps it is a reflection of their own anxieties, not your incompetence. You can then choose to assent to a more rational impression. This person is expressing their opinion based on their own fears and experiences. I can listen without having to agree or become defensive. Here's a script you can use to practice this. The next time someone does something that triggers you, mentally state the following. 1. Objective fact. What literally just happened is that person's name said the words, quote the words. 2. My story. The story I am telling myself about this is that they are being disrespectful, malicious, etc. 3. Alternative interpretation. An alternative and equally possible interpretation is that they are feeling insecure, just stressed, or trying to help in a clumsy way. 4. Chosen assent. I will not assent to the story of malice. I will assent only to the fact that they said those words, and I will choose to respond with calm and reason. A mentee, a doctor dealing with a senior partner who would constantly second-guess her diagnoses in front of patients, used this to reclaim her authority and peace of mind. Her initial story was, he's trying to undermine me and make me look foolish. Her new, chosen assent was, he is stating his medical opinion. I will listen, evaluate it objectively, and respond based on the medical facts, not on a feeling of being attacked. This discipline allowed her to remain calm, professional, and in command, which ultimately earned her more respect than any emotional outburst ever could. This practice is not about being passive. It is about being precise. It is about ensuring you are responding to reality, not to the ghosts and monsters of your own imagination. Ask yourself, to what emotional stories are you giving your assent every day? What is the objective fact of a difficult situation in your life, and what is the dramatic narrative you have wrapped around it? Strategic detachment. The art of withdrawing. Emotional investment. You have begun to fortify your mind and to challenge your impressions. The next layer of this strategy is a concept that is often misunderstood: detachment. In modern language, detachment sounds cold, uncaring, and aloof. But in Stoic practice, it is a warm and deeply strategic act. Strategic detachment is not about ceasing to care about people. It is about ceasing to tie your own tranquility and well-being to their behavior, their opinions, and their choices, things that are fundamentally outside your control. It is the art of withdrawing your emotional investment from outcomes you cannot command. You can love someone deeply, you can wish the best for them, and you can help them when it is right to do so, but you do not grant them the power to destroy your inner peace. This was perhaps the most difficult lesson for me to learn, especially in my personal life. My success in business was built on intense investment. I was invested in my products, my market share, my team's performance. I carried the same mindset home. I was deeply emotionally invested in my family's happiness, their moods, their choices. If my wife was having a bad day, I felt it as my failure to make her happy. If one of my children struggled in school, I experienced it as a deep personal disappointment. My love was intertwined with a need to control and manage their emotional states. It was exhausting for me and suffocating for them. My peace was a fragile thing, constantly being shattered by the normal, everyday struggles of the people I loved most. The letters of Seneca to his friend Lucilius are a masterclass in this principle. He advises, regarding friendship, to love your friends, but always with the quiet understanding that they might leave you or disappoint you. This isn't morbid, it's realistic. He says, "He who has made a fair compact with destiny. He has seen to it that his happiness is proof against all assaults." This fair compact is strategic detachment. It is acknowledging that the only thing that is truly yours is your own character and your own will. Everything else, the health, happiness, and choices of others, belongs to them and to fate. You can be a positive force in their lives, but you cannot be the architect of their soul. Here is a practical application. Identify a person in your life whose moods and actions have a significant impact on your own. For the next month, your practice is to create a small mental space of detachment. When they express anger, sadness, or anxiety, your first job is not to fix it or absorb it. Your first job is to protect your own citadel. You can say with genuine compassion, "I can see you are feeling angry right now. I am here for you, but I will not let your anger become my anger." You are offering support without surrendering your own inner state. A client of mine did this with her chronically anxious mother. For years, every phone call would leave my client drained and anxious herself. She started practicing detachment. She would listen lovingly, but she would constantly and quietly remind herself, "Her anxiety is hers to manage. My peace is mine to command." She stopped trying to solve her mother's every worry. She just listened and offered love from a place of calm. The relationship, paradoxically, improved dramatically. Her mother, no longer feeling the pressure of my client's frantic need to fix her, actually began to calm down. Strategic detachment is the ultimate act of both self-preservation and respect for the autonomy of others. It is recognizing where you end and they begin. So I ask you, whose emotional weather system are you allowing to become your own? Where can you practice loving someone without making their internal state your responsibility? The gentle fence. Setting boundaries without declaring war. With a fortified mind, a disciplined assent, and a practice of strategic detachment, you are now ready to build your fences. But a Stoic boundary is not like a modern one. It is not an emotional ultimatum or a dramatic declaration of your grievances. It is not about them. It is about you. A Stoic boundary is a calm, logical, and predetermined rule of engagement that you establish to protect your time, your energy, and your ability to live a virtuous life. It is a gentle fence, not a brick wall. It does not seek to punish or control the other person, it simply defines the conditions under which you are willing to engage. It is a statement of what you will do, not a demand of what they must do. In my corporate life, boundaries were weapons. They were threats. If you miss another deadline, you're off the team. If you interrupt me in a meeting again, there will be consequences. This approach creates a battlefield. It invites conflict, defensiveness, and resentment, because it is focused on controlling the other person's behavior. It is an attempt to command what is not in our control. The result is a constant, draining power struggle. When you try to build a boundary based on telling other people how they must behave, you are setting yourself up for perpetual frustration, because people will inevitably fail to meet your demands. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that our focus must always remain on our own sphere of choice. Therefore, a Stoic boundary is framed around your own actions. Let's contrast the two approaches. The confrontational, ineffective boundary sounds like this. You have to stop calling me to complain all the time. It's so negative and it drains my energy. This attacks the other person and makes a demand you cannot enforce. The Stoic boundary sounds like this. I value our conversations, but I have found that I am at my best when I can keep my focus in the evenings. From now on, I won't be taking calls after 8 p.m. If you call, I won't answer, but I will be happy to talk to you tomorrow. Notice the difference. There is no blame. There is no demand. It is a simple, clear statement of what you will do. You are not trying to control whether they call you or only controlling whether you answer. Here are some practical scripts for building gentle fences. For the chronic complainer, instead of, "You have to stop being so negative," try, "I only have about 10 minutes to talk right now, but I want to focus on solutions. How can I help you move forward on this?" For the person who makes inappropriate jokes, instead of, "You can't say things like that around me," try calmly and without emotion, "I'm not going to continue this conversation while the topic is X." Then you either change the subject or physically walk away. For the family member who demands too much of your time, instead of, "You're asking for too much," try, "I can give you my undivided attention on Saturday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. I want to make sure I am fully present when we are together." A mentee of mine, a graphic designer, was being driven to burnout by a client who would call at all hours with small tweaks. He was terrified of upsetting the client. We reframed the boundary. He sent a polite email that said, "To ensure I am giving your project the focused, creative energy it deserves, I am structuring my workflow. I will be reviewing all feedback and making revisions between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. daily. Please consolidate your thoughts and send them before then to be included in that day's work." He wasn't telling the client when they could or could not have ideas, he was simply stating when he would act on them. The client's behavior changed immediately. A gentle fence is powerful because its integrity rests entirely on you and your discipline, not on the cooperation of others. Ask yourself, where in your life are you trying to set a boundary by demanding someone else change? How could you rephrase that boundary into a simple statement of what you will or will not do? The role of a human being. Using friction as fuel. This is perhaps the most profound and challenging reframe the Stoics offer. What if the difficult people in your life were not obstacles to your peace, but were in fact essential components of your training? What if their flaws were not annoyances to be endured, but were precisely the raw material you needed to forge your own virtue? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, saw his entire court, filled with schemers, flatterers, and fools, as his personal gymnasium. He understood that you cannot practice patience without someone who tests it. You cannot practice forgiveness without someone who offends you. You cannot practice courage without something that frightens you. These difficult people were not impeding his progress as a philosopher, they were his sparring partners. They were the friction required to polish his own soul. For decades, my worldview was the opposite. I believed that my success and happiness depended on creating a smooth, frictionless environment. I wanted a team that always agreed with me, clients who were never demanding, and a market that was always predictable. I saw every difficulty, every person who challenged me, as a problem to be eliminated. This is a fragile way to live. It is a constant battle against the fundamental nature of reality, which is inherently filled with friction and unpredictability. My desire for a world without difficult people was the very source of my misery when I inevitably encountered them. It wasn't them, it was my expectation that they shouldn't exist that caused my suffering. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. A dancer hopes for a smooth floor and a cooperative partner. A wrestler expects resistance. A wrestler uses their opponent's weight and momentum against them. The opponent's attack is not an interruption to the match, it is the match. This is the mindset of the Stoic warrior. When a colleague is uncooperative, you see it as an opportunity to practice creative problem-solving and diplomacy. When a friend is unreliable, it is a chance to practice self-reliance and temper your expectations. When someone is rude to you, it is your cue to practice magnanimity and self-control. Every interaction becomes a training scenario. Here is the practical mental exercise. The next time you have to interact with a person you find difficult, I want you to set a virtue intention beforehand. Instead of going into the meeting with the goal of surviving it or winning the argument, set a specific virtue you intend to practice. For instance, my intention for this conversation is to practice patience. I will not interrupt. I will listen completely before I speak. My intention for this family dinner is to practice temperance. I will not be drawn into old arguments. I will engage calmly or not at all. My intention for this negotiation is to practice justice. I will seek a fair outcome for all, not just for myself, even if the other party is aggressive. A mentee, a young entrepreneur, was locked in a bitter dispute with a co-founder. They were on the verge of destroying the company they had built. His goal was to prove his co-founder wrong. I had him shift his intention from winning to practicing justice. He went into the next meeting focused not on his own grievances, but on finding the fairest possible path forward for the company, the employees, and both of them. This single shift in intention broke the deadlock. By focusing on his own virtue rather than the other's vice, he transformed the entire dynamic from a fight into a problem-solving session. This reframe turns life from a series of annoyances into a rich and meaningful training ground. You are no longer a victim of other people's flaws. You are an alchemist, turning the lead of their ignorance into the gold of your own character. Consider this. Who is your most valuable training partner right now? What specific virtue is their difficult behavior giving you the perfect opportunity to practice? Selective association. Curating your inner circle like a garden. While Stoic philosophy teaches us to endure and learn from difficult people, it is not a call for masochism. The Stoics were intensely practical. They understood that the people with whom we surround ourselves have a profound impact on our character. A key, but often overlooked, part of managing difficult people is the proactive and deliberate curation of your inner circle. Think of your mind and your life as a garden. You must be a vigilant gardener. Your duty is twofold. First, to patiently and skillfully deal with the weeds that are already present, using the strategies we have discussed. Second, and just as important, you must be incredibly selective about the new seeds you allow to be planted. You cannot achieve a tranquil and virtuous life if you are constantly and carelessly allowing negative, chaotic, and unvirtuous influences to take root. In my younger, more ambitious days, my criteria for association were simple. Is this person useful to me? I built a vast network of contacts, allies, and partners, but I never stopped to ask a more important question. Is this person a good human being? Do they elevate my character, or do they corrode it? My inner circle was filled with brilliant, successful, and often deeply cynical and anxious people. We fed off each other's ambition and stress. We normalized gossip, ruthlessness, and a transactional view of relationships. I was trying to cultivate a garden of inner peace while planting poison ivy seeds every single day, simply because they promised to grow quickly. The environment I had curated made true tranquility impossible. Epictetus was uncompromising on this point. He warned his students, remember that if you consort with someone covered in dirt, you can hardly avoid getting a little grimy yourself. He used the analogy of a spark and a pile of kindling. If you place a living spark next to kindling, either the spark will ignite the kindling, or the kindling will extinguish the spark. The risk is too great. This isn't about arrogance or judging others as beneath you. It is a sober, strategic assessment of influence. We are all porous. The attitudes, beliefs, and habits of those we spend the most time with will inevitably seep into our own minds. The practical application is to conduct an audit of your associations. Take a piece of paper and draw 3 concentric circles. The inner circle. These are the 3-5 people closest to you. Your spouse, your most trusted friends, your mentors. These are the people who have full access to your time and vulnerability. Do they embody the virtues you wish to cultivate? Are they a source of wisdom and support? The middle circle. These are your colleagues, regular friends, and extended family. You engage with them frequently. Do these interactions generally leave you feeling uplifted and energized, or drained and diminished? The outer circle. Everyone else you interact with. Your task is to be a ruthless yet compassionate gardener. Nurture and invest more time in the plants in your inner circle that are thriving and bearing good fruit. For the weeds, the consistently negative or draining presences, you must make a choice. Can they be moved from the inner circle to the middle circle, reducing the frequency and intimacy of contact? Can they be moved from the middle to the outer circle? This isn't a dramatic confrontation. It is a quiet, deliberate reallocation of your most precious resource, your attention. A client of mine realized his closest friend was a deeply cynical person who mocked his attempts at self-improvement. He didn't have a big fight. He simply stopped making himself as available. He was always busy when the friend wanted to engage in the usual lengthy complaint sessions. Over time, the friendship naturally found a new, more distant, and healthier level. You are the curator of your own soul. It is your primary responsibility to create an environment that is conducive to its growth. I ask you, who are the 3 people you spend the most time with? Are they a testament to who you want to become, or a relic of who you used to be? The dignified exit. When removal is the virtuous path. We have explored a suite of powerful tools for managing difficult relationships with wisdom and calm. The Stoic path prioritizes patience, understanding, and using friction for growth. But the Stoics were realists, not saints. They knew that there are certain relationships where the continued association is so corrosive, so detrimental to one's reason and ability to live a virtuous life, that the only logical and courageous course of action is a complete and dignified exit. This is not a failure. It is not an act of anger or drama. It is a strategic amputation. It is recognizing that to save the whole, a part must be severed. When a relationship consistently demands that you compromise your core principles, when it actively undermines your tranquility despite all your best efforts to manage it, then choosing to stay is not a virtue. It is a form of self-abandonment. I faced this crucible moment in my own life. I had a business partner, a man I had built my first company with. For years, we were a formidable team. But as the company grew, his ethics began to fray. He started cutting corners, misleading clients, and treating employees as disposable assets. At first, I tried to manage it. I used all the tools. I tried to see his actions as a result of fear. I tried to set boundaries. I tried to use his behavior as a way to practice my own integrity. But it became clear that his path and mine were fundamentally divergent. To continue in partnership with him would mean I was, by association, condoning his actions. My silence would be a form of assent. My inner citadel was strong, but the ground on which it was built was becoming toxic. The business was thriving externally, but my soul was eroding internally. The price of our association had become my own character. Seneca, in his writings, makes it clear that while we should be tolerant of human failing, we should not be accomplices to vice. The goal is a tranquil mind, and sometimes tranquility can only be found in subtraction. The key is the how. A dramatic, accusatory exit only creates more turmoil and proves that your peace was still tied to them. The Stoic exit is quiet, decisive, and dignified. It is done with a heavy heart, but a clear mind. It is a simple, non-negotiable statement of fact, centered on your own path. My conversation with my partner was one of the hardest of my life, but it was simple. I said, "The direction you are taking the company and the way you are choosing to operate no longer align with my own principles. I cannot continue on this path with you. I wish you well, but my involvement ends here." There were no long accusations about his character. There was no dredging up of past grievances. It was a clean break based on an irreconcilable difference in virtue. Here is the protocol for a dignified exit. 1. Ensure you have done the inner work. This is the absolute last resort, not the first. You must be certain that the problem is not your own reactivity or lack of boundaries. 2. Make the decision in calm. Do not make this decision in a moment of anger. Meditate on it. Journal about it. Be sure it comes from a place of reason, not reaction. 3. The statement is about you, not them. Your reason for leaving is not because you are a terrible person. It is because this relationship no longer aligns with the person I am striving to become. 4. Be clear, concise, and final. Do not leave the door open for negotiation or debate. A dignified exit is a period, not a comma. I have made this decision for my own well-being, and it is not open for discussion. I wish you peace on your own journey. 5. Grieve the loss, but do not doubt the choice. Cutting ties, even toxic ones, involves a sense of loss. Allow yourself to feel it, but do not confuse the pain of the amputation with the idea that the decision was wrong. This is the final tool in your arsenal. It is the one to be used most sparingly, but when necessary, it must be used with courage and conviction. For your life is your own, and you are its ultimate steward. My final question to you: is there a relationship in your life that is costing you your character? And do you have the courage to choose your own virtue over a toxic peace? The choice, as always, is yours.